All right, let's see how this goes. First, we put the trace down. I'm going to do, for your assignment, you might have noticed you have two elevations, kind of a front view and a side view, if you want to talk to them like that. I'm going to do the front view. I'm not going to color them both because I'd rather you have the time to work on it during class. The reason I want to do the front view instead of the side view is I want to do the roofs, because you got a couple little techniques with that. I believe in your assignment you're just going to be coloring them on bond, and I will be asking you to do all your drawings on bond. I don't think I asked you to do any more on trace. So even though you like trace better, some of you, you'll change your mind by the time we get to week 15. So there's something to look forward to. All right. Now, if you'll notice on the drawings that I gave you, I don't have any trees. I don't have a border. These are all things that we went through before. So I'm going to go ahead and block them out. A triangle. So I'm just going to lightly in pencil I'm going to be going over these lines with pen. Just putting my little stripe down. That's actually cut off on this drawing. I'm just going to guess. What I'm doing now is there's a patio on the side, and it kind of does this. All right, so I've got the trees down, or roughly where the trees are going to be. I want to figure out where my border is going to be. I got my bottom stripe. I want to come inside of that, hit a tree. Make sure that tree is hanging out of those borders. And I wouldn't do the border right at the peak of the tree. Either do it to the left or right of the peak. We'll put a couple shrubs in there. I'll be coloring a lot of those in by mistake with red. I can see it coming. Alright, so now I blocked out the major elements. I've got the trees, I've got the border, I've got where I want the background fence or mountains to go, or whatever you want to call it. So now, what I tend to do whenever I color is I try and start with the big areas and work to the smaller areas. What do you think the two biggest areas would be on here?
The sky.
That's one. What's the second biggest area? The roof. That's why I chose this view. because I want to show you how to do a roof. Markers don't leap out of my bag. I want to show you how to do a roof in this view. Scrap up here. Let's start with the roof. And I'm going to start with a cool gray 30. These markers have been in my car. I'm hoping they still work and they're not frozen. So I'm just going to lay down one quick pass, same technique. One of my grays. Alright, so I've done my first pass on the roof, that roof, sorry. There are other roofs, a lot of roofs. Alright, there's my roof. That's pretty easy for the first pass. The sky is another matter. Ideally, you'll have 2 or 3 blues. I think I just have 2. So we'll make it work with 2. That's not looking promising. Cross your fingers. That is my darker blue. Come on. Alright, that one might work. What I do for the sky, and for years I wouldn't let people do a marker sky because I couldn't come up with one that I liked. I had a couple different sky techniques that you don't have to worry about. Or I would just leave it blank. But I've come up with a marker sky that kind of works, and I'm going to show you what it is. And it starts with a diamond pattern of your lightest blue. What I want you to do is make these weird diamonds. See how I made these kind of diamond shapes? I made 4 of them. Now I want to fill in all the rest of the sky with these alternating. If I'm at the top and I can't get over the top, I just bring it right up to the border. They're kind of loosey-goosey. And here, and I want to do everywhere, and you want to bump parts of the sky right up to the roof. Alright, so that would be a diamond here, and right up to the trees. Here. And you could fake it down here. I'll put it there. Alright, and when you're done with this first pass, it kinda looks like a chain link fence in reverse. You got these diagonal white stripes going. By the time we're done, it's not gonna look like that. You'll barely be able to tell that they were there, but that's where we start. Okay, next big area I would say would be the house, then the bricks, but before I do those, because I had my blue marker out, my light blue marker out anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the windows with one coat of light blue. At this scale, of course, it's tricky to stay in the lines. You can try using the tip of your marker as best you can. Alright, there's all the windows. We got all the light blue down. Next, I'm going to go for the trees. I'll use that same light green that I used on my site plan and just kind of fill in the trees. And I tend to start at the center, and it doesn't really matter how you do it, just lay down a broken down wash of green. Next would be the body of the house itself. Now, I've got what's this? Brick white, which is a very pale color. What I would recommend whenever you're doing houses, like if someone says, I want a blue house or I want a red house, I wouldn't just immediately grab your dark markers. I would make the color of the building as muted as possible, and you could then make it a gray or a beige, really light, and then you can add accents in later, because if you put down, like if they said they wanted the house to be blue, if I put a blue marker over that, it would just be overwhelming. So I would tend to use either a beige or a light gray, and I would put my first wash down on it. And what you probably noticed when you were doing your own is the colors start out vivid when you put them down, and then after a couple minutes, when the ink dries, they get a lot more subtle. For example, I mean, if you look at here versus here, you can see this is much darker and more vivid than here. And over time, that will whiten out when it dries. Now, quite often you've got white trim on your houses, and so you're trying not to fill in those lines, your trim lines, but I will tell you that's a tall order, especially at this scale. So do your best. You know, it's going to go outside of the lines at times. It's just the nature of the beast. What I will do is, you know, if it's for a client, I'll go back in GIMP and I'll actually erase any big bleed out of the trim, but you don't have to worry about it. I'll just alright, and I've got a little bit of concrete down here, so I'm going to go ahead and use my light gray to fill that in, and then we're going to do the brick. This light gray is a Cool Gray 30. It's the same gray that I used for the roof. And I'm just going to put a little bit on the concrete areas. Doesn't that look beautiful? Now we're going to start laying in second coats of color. Alright, I'm going to start with my sky because that's the biggest. I'm going to take the same light blue that I used to make these, and I'm just going to kind of go over them, but I'm going to shift them around a little bit. I'm kind of making diamonds again, but I'm not doing it exactly where the old ones were. I'm kind of filling in the bottom of them a little bit, but I'm also letting it get see, I'm going down and to the right with these things, sort of, but I'm not being super accurate. There are times when it's gonna not be on it. And I will tell you that the sky like this takes a couple shots at it. You might want to practice doing a couple of these, just doing skies on a scrap of paper. And I don't know if you're noticing it at all, but although you can still make out that diamond pattern, it's nowhere near as strong. I've busted it up a little. I made these kind of loose. Just if you see a big white area, throw a little more blue in it. It's okay. And don't hesitate to get right up next to that building and shoot through some of those things. Alright, that's good for that. Next comes the roof, and we're going to do the famous half of the half. I'm going to put a second coat down mainly from the bottom half of the roof, but I will add a second coat of the same light gray that I added to some of the corners. So let's watch what happens. I'm going to put a little bit here, a little bit there. And you can start at the bottom. And then work your way up. And what I tend to do is I tend to I do a full stripe on the bottom, I do almost a full stripe and leave a little of the middle out as I go up, I do less of a full stripe, so I got kind of this lighter area in here. Let's see if it shows up when I do this. So I start at the bottom, lay down a heavy, put a little dab in the corners, then this time I don't go all the way through with the stripe. I just do that. Now I'm going to put, oh, I forgot one of the most important parts, the brick. Now I happen to have a couple different colors of red. You might just have one, but it'll work with one. It'll just be pretty intense. It's going to be intense anyway. Alright, so I'm going to lay down a coat on the brick. Once again, I forgot my windows. Okay, so I put one coat on everything. I forgot to do the brick and the chimney. I'm going to put a second coat on the windows. I'm going to start at the top left corner and kind of work my way down. Probably doing about 2/3 of the window, so kind of just like that, and then like that. What you're trying to do just not make the markers read like just a flat sheet of color. Oh, yep, got them all. Oh, no, I didn't. This one's a little tricky, so I'm mainly just gonna do a little on the ends. Because it's tough to do anything across the top of those without doing the whole top. Now I got to do the house, and this is important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put another layer on the bottom going up, much like I did with the roof. I want to gradate the color so it's kind of lighter at the top for the most part, a little more vivid at the bottom, and hopefully you'll see it work here when I do my second coat. It always looks good when I first put the marker down, but it'll get more subtle. See what I'm doing, how I kind of dribble it? A couple taps up there. I'm not doing a distinct line. I'll put a little in the corner, maybe a little there. You know, I love just adding a little color, or, you know, when I do texture, it's the same thing with texture. You know, I kind of like to aim for the corners, but in this case what you're trying to do is start at the bottom, more vivid at the bottom, and just kind of work your way up. All right, the brick. Well, now I'm going to go crazy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a touch of this electric red on the bottom. You don't have to do this. You can just use the second layer with whatever red you have. So I'm just putting just a tiny little bit, just tapping with the tip of the marker and going up. Not much. Now we're going to start adding a third coat onto these things. For the roof, I'm probably going to go one more gray. And I'm basically going to go over what I did before, maybe stretch it out a little, but really focus on laying down a bunch right here. Start by putting that bottom stripe on all your roofs. Now, again, what you're going to find, which you probably already found, is that, you know, by about the fourth coat of this, it doesn't really make much difference. So, you know, I'm going to leave a little out. Here's my roof. Now I'm going to do the house. I'm saving the sky for, oh, I already did the second one on the house. I don't really have to do a third one on the house. We could if we wanted. We could just put another little dab down there. Again, it's just little touches of color with a couple dots in there. That's plenty. I am going to take my original red and try and soften the vivid red to the other red. So right where the vivid red ends, I want to just add a little bit more of that. Just a touch. So I'm going over that violent red and just putting a couple dots in there. Now we're going to get crazy. Now I'm going to take a more vivid blue that I've got. And this is kind of electric. And now I'm going to do this random pattern of kind of these things. They're just little stripes. Yeah, they still got a little of that diamond going on, but I'm not lining them up with anything in particular. I'm just throwing a few of these in there. I'm trying to make a couple of them go. Through trees, through the roof. I already did that. I'll put another one up here. This looks like it could use one. And again, I'm kind of feathering it out, no particular order. And let's throw a little one here. Maybe a blob here. Just a couple dots. I'm going to do the same thing. Oh, this is crying for one. Going to do the same. I'm just going to put a touch in the corner of my windows. Just about like that. And I missed a window. You folks didn't tell me about it. But we can fix that. Whoa, not with gray I can't. Hopefully that won't be horrible. Oh, good. Again, just a little touch of that blue. Now what I do, I'm going to get to the trees in a minute. Now I'm going to take my light blue, I hope, and now I want to soften these things. So I'm going to kind of just do, I'm going to put another layer of that light blue over these. Mainly I'm keeping these at the bottom and just going up above them, but there's no real, and you can just throw in a couple dabs of blue. You know, if you get loose and weird with it, it tends to work out just fine. Don't hesitate to just puddle it up and throw just a couple little dabs all over. And I think you'll notice, remember that whole diamond pattern? It's pretty much gone. I mean, it's still there. There it is, there it is, there it is, there it is. But by doing those other layers, I've gotten rid of it. Now I'm going to take these windows and same thing. I'm just going to start where I put that dark blue and just kind of pretend I'm pulling it down a little bit. Just putting a third layer of that light blue down. Now, sometimes I'll go ahead and I'll take the same beige I used on the house and I'll just add some touches of it to the roof just to warm it up. But in particular, make that bottom dark. So don't hesitate to the bottom is what we're trying to Again, we're trying to do what we did with the lines, which we will be putting over this. And that's just going to warm it up a little bit and make it a little darker. Trees, same thing. I'm going to take my light green that I used to make the trees, much like you did with your plan trees. I'm going to do about 2/3 to 3/4 of the tree with a second coat of my light green. And I'm going to do it and don't hesitate to put those dots in there. Down and to the right. I'm then going to take my darker green, or my medium green. I think I got a medium green in here someplace. It doesn't feel medium, but I think it is. Oh yeah, it is. Okay. A little less, and I'm going to have my light green handy, because I want to see if I can smudge this a little bit. So let's see what we can do. Let's start on this one. Again, I haven't gone as far as I went with the first one. And I'm going to try and quickly see if I can maybe soften that a little. If I catch it on time. See how I can kind of get rid of some of the hard edges. Not much, but it helps a little. I'll do the same thing over here. Bottom. But not as far up as I went with the other one. And don't be shy about putting those dots in there. I'm going to go over it with this one, my light green, and see in particular, focusing on that edge. And again, it's not like trace, I can't just blend it right away, but it'll blend a little. Going to use the pointy end for this one. If you don't have the pointy end, you can find a point on the tip of your marker. Now, I'm going to get my darkest green. I'm going to have the medium green handy. And I'm just going to put like ever so little just down to the right, just like a bottom. And a couple dots, and that's going to be about it. Then I'm going to grab that medium green, and again, so basically what I'm doing is the same thing you did with your trees and plant. Down and to the right, put the darker greens, make it lighter as you go up. I'm not going to put much on these shrubs, but I will put a little. with the fat end, I won't. And let's scrub that around. Again, don't be afraid to stipple. That's it for color. Alright, and as was the case with the plans, actually I will wind up putting a yellow stripe in those trees, but we're going to do that towards the end. Other than that, we're done with coloring.
What do you do with the garage doors and the house door? Do you leave them?
Those I'm just going to leave white.
Okay.
It's up to you. I mean, if you want to try a color on the door, I would almost say, I'm going to do this and maybe it would, let's say this, they wanted a red house. I would grab a pencil, and hopefully I'll be able to erase it after I put it down. But I've laid down this beige, rather than do the whole thing like this, which is just going to be too bold. If you have a red pencil, which I kind of do, yeah, sure, that'll work. Very lightly hinted some red in the corner. Think of it like texture. Just put a little bit in the corners. And I think that'll get the point across. Again, going from vivid, darker, more intense red to nothing. Put a couple touches by the windows. It'll hint enough at the red to let them know that you're giving them their red house. Now, I didn't want this to be a red house, so hopefully, yeah, I can get rid of most of it, and the rest will just be character. But that's all I would do. I mean, and it was, if you got a cool color, like if they wanted a blue house, I would use a light gray instead of a beige. If you got a warm color, I would use the beige instead of a light gray. Well, I didn't get all of it, but I got enough of it. It just close enough. Oh, I don't like that. Let's see if I can get that out of there. Yeah, it's still left a little red, but it's good enough. Alright, now what do? We're going to do ink work. And much like with the plans, I'm going to start with the profile line, but once you start laying down the ink, all of a sudden this mess that you see up here, which kind of looks like the back of your drawings, you know how when you flip your drawings over and you've got this real ghosty image of color? This kind of looks like that at this point. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the profile, I'm going to do some shadows, and then I'll come in with my heavier work. Why is that moving? Well, God knows if that's going to be straight now, but we'll find out, I guess. But it is the ink work which is really going to make it sing. Hopefully it won't rip my drawing again. Let's get in there. Get off of there. Okay, I'm going to kind of do the shadows at the same time that I'm doing the profiles. And I'm just going to go ahead and use my triangle because that's acting. Now, what you'll find is that on Bond, your Sharpie is a lot less likely to smudge, so that's good. Okay, now I'm going to start doing that profile line. See, again, I'm doing the profile line and the shadows at the same time. Profile, I'm just doing the perimeter, just like, again, I mean, you guys are pretty good at, this is all just black and white tracing, and it's the same as, my profile, I got that, I've got another shadow here, I'm just going to put a, all right, if you'll notice, just putting the shadows in and a profile line that alone starts to make a huge difference. This thing wiggling again. Let's see if I can. Come on, behave. There we go. It's a little crooked, but we'll get used to it. So see how just putting the shadows and the profile lines in, oh, I forgot a couple shadows. elevations are all about shadows. So I just putting those in, all of a sudden things popped out. Now I'm going to start going in with my lightweight ink work. See how this works. Oh, first I'm going to do my angles. I don't have many in my circles. It's a very tiny circle, so I'm just hinting at it, and I'm just going to hint at the shadow with this. Just like before when we did our other ones. Okay, let me start with my horizontal lines. And I'm using the triangle because this tape doesn't want to sit still. So let's just do it like this. I am going to want to make this thing sit still in a minute. Now the middle line of the windows, I gave you these lightweight ones to color, and you're going to wind up losing the middle line of the windows, but it's there. If you look through your markers a lot, you can see it. Okay, I'm taping this thing down for real because this is driving me insane. Hopefully, that will stay put. We'll see. Much better. I think I got most of the horizontals. And you can start to see how all of a sudden that loose, the mess of the color all of a sudden, provided you can see it. Sorry. The mess of the color all of a sudden starts to tighten up when you put your line work down, which is why it's real important to get that in this case, it's you've got light copies, so you really don't have a choice. But even with a dark copy, it makes a difference to go over the line work. I'm going to double line that just to make it stand out a little bit. Once I'm done with these lines, what should I be thinking of doing next? I would do the trees next. I would get the trees, and then I would start thinking about texture. And in particular, the roof, of course. But it is, it's all the same as when you did your elevations on tracing paper. Oh, let's, I'm just putting a double line around those. Just to make it stand out a little bit. Alright, trees. Let's get the trees and the shrubs lined. Always like to throw a couple little leaves out in space, especially near the top. And I'm trying to get close to where the marker was, but it's not. I'm also trying to put more jigs and jogs in it. I'm just going to put a little. I'm going to do my background stripe and my border. Actually, I'm going to do my border first. And then I'll come back in and put in texture, and the texture is the same rules as before. Remember, thin marker for your thin Sharpie for your border. Don't use your fat Sharpie. put Janelle's little dewberries on top. Alright, texture. Roof is the same as before, half of the half of the half of that same stripe, and you're gonna see, with any luck, there she goes. What is with this tape today? Hopefully, it's still lined up. Now, one thing I'm going to show you that you might have caught on to that I do is I put a dot down first before I do the line. For example, well, I've already got it set up here. Alright, let's say I want to go halfway on this half. I put my pen down first. I put a little dot there, I move my thing close to it, put my pen back on it, bring my bar up to my pen. As opposed to trying to get the bar on there. Doink. And with any luck at all, much like with the black and white, it starts to hint that the roof is sloping. I mean, it's not perfect, but it gets the point across. I'm going to go ahead and throw some horizontal texture on these bricks. That's going to be close together. And I've done all the roofs. What's left is going to be a little bit of clapboard work. I want to make sure it's bigger than the bricks. Aiming for my corners. Oops, forgot a line there. But it's a good excuse to put some clapboard on. Doesn't take a ton. look for places that look particularly lonely and are just crying for some clapboard. Well, that didn't sound good. Okay, I'm gonna put a little bit, oh, I gotta do my bricks here. I've got a soldier course up top, so I'm gonna leave that one blank, but I'll put it in. It's a little bigger. Having all sorts of equipment issues here. Stuff's moving and ripping and drooping and okay, I'm gonna put a little bit of vertical in on the bricks and we should be just about done. Anybody think anything I'm missing? Oh, I gotta do those roofs. Thing about textures, it's always kind of a subtle thing. But you know that. You guys are pretty good at texture, actually. I'm impressed with what I've seen to date out of this group. Oh, yeah, every time you look at it, you find more stuff that you forgot to do. See here, I completely colored over the white trim, but we'll just put a line there and call it good. There's enough clapboard there, and then all that's left to do is these roofs, where I didn't do the half of the half. And I think in a minute, anybody see anything they think I should be doing that I haven't done? Alright, we'll call, I mean, I can do the scale. I would move this. Meaning in GIMP I would probably not keep it where it's shown. I would cut it and move it on the page. Now the door actually has a little bit of pattern to it. It's at such a small scale that it can potentially get ugly, but we're gonna try and at least put something in there to kind of break up that door a little bit. There's actually a a pattern on the door. I'm not actually copying the pattern per se, I'm just hinting at it to break it up a little bit. Wow, this is a sticky mess here. Alright, I think that should just about do it. Any questions? Awesome. Stop recording. Move that out of the way. And take tape off with it.